We look next tonight at the growing gang culture in cities throughout the United States. Many activities of the estimated 70,000 gang members in Los Angeles County have been covered by the media. However, the NewsHour has discovered, and the Justice Department confirmed in a recent report, that some Los Angeles-based gangs are on the move. Kwame Holman reports.
The Crips and the Bloods no longer are exclusively a Los Angeles problem. For years, authorities there have charged them with selling crack cocaine and committing violence. But recently, the LA gangs have gone on the road. 70 shootings in Portland last fall. More violence in Seattle, even in Anchorage. The Crips and the Bloods have traveled east to large and small cities, including Phoenix, Denver, and Omaha. The NewsHour has learned that the gangs also have caused trouble from Shreveport to rural Arkansas to Des Moines to Nashville. Now they're starting to challenge established East Coast gangs. Los Angeles Police Commander Lorne Kramer briefs officials from other cities about the gangs.
A few Los Angeles gang members will go to a city. They will establish themselves in usually the black community or an ethnic minority community. They will actually survey the community to see if there is a market for drugs, to see who controls the market, what that market is, what the demand is. And then they will start to administer or dispense narcotics.
So what does a community do when the Crips and the Bloods come to town? Denver, Colorado has been struggling with that question for 4 years. In 1985, when the first Crip came to visit relatives, he was not seen as a threat, even though he convinced 2 existing gangs to take the Crips' name.
Disperse now, leave the streets.
In 1986, there was a flurry of attention when a neighborhood festival ended in a riot after a sniper, believed to be a gang member, shot a policeman. But there was no organized response. District Attorney Norm Early.
All too often, when people are confronted with a new problem, they sort of stick their heads in the sand and pretend that it will not exist if we don't look at it. And I think that to some degree the city was guilty of that. I think also that there was a certain amount of lack of knowledge as to just what to do and how to meet this particular problem.
As city officials were learning, gang members were continuing to come to town and profit from the sale of crack, or love as it is advertised on the walls.
This is the Big Easy. That's what they call it. You make more money in littler towns there. LA is a big city. They have a lot of gang members, so if all of them selling drugs or doing whatever, they ain't that much money. But if they come to a town like Denver where they ain't hip, then they can make all the money they can.
I told them no, and they kept trying to pressure me into joining.
The Crips and Bloods also kept recruiting local youngsters. These middle school students did not want their identities revealed.
I was thinking if they want to initiate me, they probably want to beat me up real bad and see how much I could take.
They've heard stories of children earning $20 a day to act as lookouts. Some teenagers make over $500 a day.
You'll meet a gang member. They'll take you down to where the rich people live, and they'll tell you, you be with me, you be in my gang, you sell my drugs, and all this can be yours. You have fancy cars, big house, gold, diamonds, anything you want.
By 1989, the Crips and Bloods had started recruiting whites and Hispanics as well as blacks. Their numbers had grown to over 1,400 members, and they were impossible to ignore. They filled wall after wall with their graffiti.
Does this look serious, man?
And made the news with their gangbanging, their word for fighting, and their shootings, which reached 1 a day this spring. Denver police officer Dave Dawkins was assigned to keep track of their activities. He learned that their violence was not caused by the use of crack.
What happens when a gang member starts using crack, that he loses his loyalty to the gang and becomes loyal to the drug, and he's no longer a good gangbanger.
Who's in charge here? You. Who's second in charge? Chico?
Dawkins says the violence is instead caused by a lack of organization and by close affiliations with Los Angeles neighborhoods. So you guys are Bloods?
Yeah, Crenshaw Mafia. Inglewood Watts, Crenshaw Mafia, Gangsta Blood, 104th Street.
Such affiliations carry with them decades-old hostilities between those Los Angeles neighborhoods true to the Crips and those loyal to the Bloods.
They've been trying to kick up dust. They've been trying to kick up dust, but little do they know, it's about to be on. That's real.
Giving the wrong hand sign
Crip killer for life.
or wearing the wrong color can mean death. The Bloods claim the color red, the Crips blue, and anyone wearing a rival color is fair game. The whole community got the message when non-gang member Cameron Smith was gunned down for wearing a red Oklahoma Sooners cap.
Everyone must share.
Recently, the gangs have also claimed the colors yellow, green, black, and silver. Many of those who live in gang territory have become frustrated.
I've told my mom and dad that, see, they got me a red bike for my birthday. And so riding down there on my red bike, and I got some red shorts, and then when I wear them, I'm just scared to ride down there. So sometimes I'll just go over a friend's house and stay there for a while.
I don't like gangs because they take your lives away for just one certain color. And I think that's not fair to other people because most people's favorite colors are red and blue, so then they get shot because they want to wear their favorite color.
This year, Denver Mayor Federico Peña announced that the city was ready to fight back.
The city, in conjunction with others, will be doing much more in providing new recreational opportunities for the thousands of young people in our city.
The mayor also said the city would coordinate educational, counseling, and job opportunities for youngsters. But juvenile court judge David Ramirez is concerned that methods used to fight old-fashioned gangs won't work anymore.
The court would issue a bench warrant for his arrest, and the bond would be increased.
According to the judge, the amount of money to be made from the sale of crack makes all the difference.
If a kid has that much money, what do you think his philosophy is about power, about what money can do, and how we got that money? And so I think you have to change the approach to dealing with those kids.
Significant changes have been made in the prosecution of gang members. Cameron Smith's convicted killer was given life in prison with no parole for 40 years. Even burglars are being given longer sentences if their crime is gang-related. On the state level, new legislation mandates 5 years in prison for using a semi-automatic weapon and 1 year for writing graffiti.
Evidently there was a criminal miss. Big Rodney was up there. He got hit with a brick.
And Dawkins and 20 other police officers have been assigned to a special urban street crimes unit.
Got a radio call. They're asking for someone right now.
We keep getting calls up here.
As seen with this special night camera, Dawkins is on hand to gather information when any gang activity is reported. He's on hand at loud parties.
Later. Hey, what have you been up to? Somebody coming in.
And when a SWAT team is called in to find a teenager who fired a gun.
Mom says he's a Crip. But I don't know him personally. I'll have to check the list and see.
Other policemen have been accused of being overzealous in their treatment of those who just happen to wear a gang color.
There have been problems when we first jumped on this with a lot of police involvement. And I think with more training and more experience of our police officers, those mistakes will be minimized.
Chicken Loc. What's up?
Dawkins, who is one of the most experienced, says that police intervention is only part of the solution. He looks to the community and to parents to help him in his efforts to document gang members. But he has found that parents often either don't know about their children's activities or don't want to.
How old are you?
13.
13? Where you go to school?
Cole.
Cole? You been in trouble with the police before? Never? I want to get your picture here. Stand by. Come here. A little closer. Where's he been?
Dawkins' questions were interrupted by an angry father who called the youngsters away.
Girl, jump in your damn home right now. Go home.
All right.
Yeah. Don't y'all quit fucking.
Looks like we're talking.
What?
We're talking. We are talking with them.
Well, people alone.
And there is the problem. The parents. You know, to allow their kids to wear rags and identify with a gang is a problem.
What should that parent do?
The first thing you should do is not blame the cops for what the kids are involved in.
You cannot deal with the kid himself.
Judge Ramirez says that any solution that does not involve the family is doomed to failure.
We have to go back to the home life, the home situation, and deal with that and try and instill the normal sorts of values that most people have. Because you can't tell this kid unless you do that, we'll give you a $4 an hour job at McDonald's. It's going to laugh at you.
When Ramirez was in the city court, he made families come in for mandatory counseling, but nobody continued that program when Ramirez moved up to the state bench.
If we have to adopt legislation that allows the court to jail or fine the parent, fine. But I think something has to be done with the parent at this point in time.
Ironically, many gang members also see family as important, but to them, a gang is the solution to a poor home life. They look to their fellow gang members, or homies as they call them, for love and support, as these suburban Aurora police officers found out.
You live in the neighborhood, you should know what's going on. We're not asking you to be a snitch. We're just trying to find out what's going on. We're just trying to help you.
If somebody took down one of your homies, would you tell us who it was? No.
Why not?
I'll take it in my hands and do it myself. And then what's going to happen to you?
Then you're going to
I get caught, I go to jail. Is it worth it? Yeah, it is. It's more than y'all think it is, man. Homies
Why don't you let us help you?
Homies are like family, man. That love between the fellas is there.
The Reverend Leon Kelly diverted these Crips and Bloods out of the gangs by addressing their need for family. He gives them his love and support. He works long days and nights without pay or city funding to be their big brother.
A lot of it goes back with that personal care, the personal touch of getting involved in their life and letting them know that it's cool to be in school. They could hear things like that from me, and receive it more so than they could receive from the mayor or anybody else.
Kelly, who spent time in prison when he was younger, uses pictures of dead gang members to convince his youngsters not to use guns. They seem convinced.
The true story, the bottom line is, if we don't get a handle on the situation now, it's going to be out of hand, and we're going to be just like LA. Leon ain't going to be able to do it. Open Door ain't going to be able to do it. The police ain't going to be able to do it. It's just going to be like a little LA if we don't get a situation under control now.
LA police die, innocent people die. You can be in your neighborhood walking down your street, and I just happen to see a gang baby driving, you walking by, you going to get shot.
These statistics right here. Look at these statistics right here. A 14-year-old boy sitting down, you can read him, sitting down in his chair at home, shot and killed behind gang-related. A 16-month-year-old baby shot in the head after they chased him the day.
3 is going to 18 how many times?
We're getting to the kids before they get in gangs, and before they get on drugs, and before they decide to drop out of school.
Dean Askew is trying to prevent youngsters from ever joining gangs. He believes that the solution is to provide love, discipline, and lots of things to do.
Stop the music. Okay, I want everybody to do it right.
Askew himself was in trouble with the law before he started playing football. After his pro career, he began a mission to get his 2 sisters off crack and to save as many youngsters as he could. Working without city funding, he renovated an old building and invited the neighborhood in.
It gives them a sense of belonging. When kids can walk out and say, "Hey, Dean," and give me a hug, it's working. They cannot put on an application gang member. They cannot put on an application crack dealer. They're going to tell you to go start a pharmacy. Don't work that way. So, they'll learn.
Go ahead and stay out here.
Some do seem to be learning. This year, the neighborhood festival was peaceful, with no gangs in sight. The police also have had some successes. The number of arrests for crack use are up. But the problem is far from over. Gang members still get shot. These police officers thought they had spotted a car used in a drive-by shooting. And families of gang members have come under attack. 12-year-olds still are joining gangs, and older members are staying in the gang longer.
Father, in the name of Jesus, Lord, as we come to you.
And all across the Denver area, individuals are struggling to find enough money to reach enough youngsters to make a difference.
Amen. Amen.
Justice Department and other agencies recently named Denver as a test city for a new effort to combat youth violence. We first covered Denver's problems in 1989. Tom Bearden has this update report.
4 years ago, the NewsHour interviewed Damon Roberts. At the time, Roberts was a cocky 16-year-old who bragged about being a member of a gang called AK.
AK means anybody killer, gangster. That means I killed Crips and Bloods, you know, whoever.
Back then, Roberts thought Denver was a new frontier for tough young drug dealers.
This is the Big Easy. That's what they call it. The Big Easy. It's easier. You make more money in littler towns. LA's a big city. They have a lot of gang members, so if all of them selling drugs or doing whatever, they ain't that much money. But if they come to a town like Denver where they ain't hip, then they can make all the money they can.
Roberts is now dead, a casualty of the same violence he once embraced. Police say Roberts was shot to death by a 14 and a 16-year-old in a drug deal gone sour. In 1989, Reverend Leon Kelly tried to persuade Damon Roberts and other teens to leave the gangs. Back then, as a gritty reminder of the dangers of gang life, Kelly covered his office walls with clippings about murdered gang members in Los Angeles. Today, Kelly's walls are filled with the names of murdered Denver youth.
It has caused, certainly, me to become frustrated, as I've heard the cries and the concern from many of these kids. As we spoke to the young men back then, they expressed their concerns, their desires and hopes. But yet, it is almost like yelling out, voice yelling out in the wilderness. Nobody wants to listen, nobody wants to really take this problem as a serious problem.
Also back then, Kelly had a room full of teens, including Roberts, who said they wanted out of the gangs. They were worried about the direction gangs were taking in Denver.
The true story, the bottom line is, if we don't get a handle on the situation now, it's going to be out of hand, and we're going to be just like LA. Leon ain't going to be able to do it. Open Door ain't going to be able to do it. The police ain't going to be able to do it. It's just going to be like a little LA if we don't get a situation under control now.
LA police die. Innocent people die. You can be in your neighborhood walking down your street, and I just happen to see a gang baby driving, you walking by, you going to get shot.
Who's second in charge? Chico?
Police Sergeant Dave Dawkins met the same teens on the streets every day. His colleagues called him Dr. Gang. We asked him to watch the 1989 NewsHour story. Most of the youth we profiled have been jailed at least once in the past 4 years.
Do you recognize him?
Yeah, that's Daryl. Daryl, I believe, has been indicted or is in prison at this point for selling drugs, cocaine.
Dawkins believes city officials were slow to acknowledge the power and appeal of gangs.
I really feel that they didn't think that we were the type of city that was going to have these kind of problems that we had. We never experienced them before, so why should we now?
But for angry kids like Damon Roberts, Dawkins says the gang lifestyle was immediately attractive.
He took this anger into the gang, and that sort of validated it. It was okay now. So the gangs validated his anger, and they gave him a way to express his anger through violence.
You guys claiming anything?
In the last 4 years, Denver's gangs have grown 5-fold. Weapons arrests for juveniles have gone up 95%. Violent crime 60%. What happened to Colorado and what happened to Damon Roberts is not unusual. The National Centers for Disease Control say the recent wave of juvenile crime has become a public health crisis. Nationally, the FBI reports the number of juveniles murdered by firearms has increased 80% in the past 5 years. And it's not unusual for teens to be shot more than once. Damon Roberts was shot in a gunfight just 6 months before he was killed. Rival gang members pulled alongside Roberts' car and sprayed it with 14 bullets. Roberts was hit twice. The driver was killed.
Stab wound to the leg, gunshot wound to the chest. What was the blood pressure? Over what?
In the emergency room at Denver General Hospital, Dr. Vince Markovichik says the gunshot victims are getting younger. And for some juveniles, violence has become what he terms a chronic recurrent disease.
If you or I were shot, for example, we would be very upset, we would be very anxious, we would be very concerned about our own well-being, about what's going to happen to us. Are we going to live? Are we going to die? The gang members seem to take this as a matter-of-fact kind of thing. It was going to happen to me sooner or later, and so it's happened. So what? It's no big deal.
Apparently, many teens are just as fatalistic, even non-gang members. This year, a national poll found that 1 of every 3 students in high school believe their lives are likely to be cut short by gunfire. Del Elliott, a University of Colorado criminologist, says that kind of attitude can prove deadly.
I think we have to address the reality that kids value life less. These kind of kids, at least, value life less than they did before. I think there's been a real change in the underlying belief system, levels of bonding, the empathy that kids today are bringing with them into these kinds of situations, which makes it possible to use a gun. I mean, after all, when you think about taking another person's life, it requires more than just having a gun present. I mean, you are, in fact, going to pull that trigger, and you have some sense of what that means. And it's very clear that kids, particularly in gangs, know that. I mean, if you talk with them, they often tell you they don't think that they're going to live for another 2 years. I mean, they've got this very realistic appraisal of what life is like in real high violence situations.
Over the last 7 years, Denver has officially declared war on gangs 13 times. Special police forces were set up to crack down on gangs. Youth initiatives were created. Task forces formed. But the violence continued. And then this summer, things took a frightening turn when firearm violence spilled out of traditional gang turf. A 10-month-old baby was hit by a stray bullet at the Denver Zoo. Another random bullet hit a 6-year-old boy as he played outside his home. A 27-year-old teacher was killed in a suburban parking lot. A 43-year-old man was shot to death while driving his car only blocks from his home. The shootings continued, and most crimes were gang-related. Even the mayor's empty car was riddled by bullets in front of his home.
First thing that went through my mind, as well as my wife's, is that are the kids okay? I'm mayor, but I'm also a husband and a parent. And we had children, adults, children at home. And the second thing that went through after finding out everyone was safe is that if someone would do this to the mayor's car, it also says a lack of respect they have, that they'll do it to anyone.
The mayor and the city were galvanized. Neighborhoods joined forces to reclaim the streets. The mayor pumped an extra $1 million into beefing up police strength.
The biggest issue in America to me is not welfare reform, it's not health care, it's not foreign policy. The issue of America is how we as Americans are going to address the issue of violence in our cities, which to me is the heart of America's soul, and cities are interdependent with suburbs. You can't have one without the other.
The problem is violence. The problem is kids killing kids. The problem is gangs in control of our neighborhoods. The problem is guns in the hands of children.
Governor Roy Romer thought the problem was so severe that he gathered the Colorado legislature for a special session on juvenile crime. In 5 days, lawmakers pushed through a new law that banned teenagers from possessing handguns. The legislature poured millions into a juvenile detention system.
Turn around, put your hands on top of your head. Turn around, put your fingers together.
But will Colorado's new gun law and stricter juvenile sentencing slow the escalation of teenage violent crime? Kelly is not optimistic.
Do you think what happened in the special session will do any good?
Until we change the mindsets of these kids behind the guns, then we're not going to see a change in the type of violence. You know, like I said, once, you know, these kids who feel that they would rather be caught by the police with a gun than to be caught by the rival gang without one. You know, until that change, we're not going to see no change.
That won't be an easy thing to do. Guns have become increasingly popular among gang members and non-gang members alike.
Do you think children should stop killing children? Yes!
At a Denver rally for stricter gun laws, suburban students said they understood why guns are so popular.
Protect yourself. Everybody else got a gun, why not you? If someone's gonna shoot you, you gotta shoot them.
For protection. The streets got so bad,
You can't use your bare fist no more to fight. You have to use a gun now. You go cruising out, you know, you go to the wrong Taco Bell sometimes, people pull a gun on you. It just depends, because they try to act cool in front of their friends. They got a gun, they think they're cool, they think they're bad. You know, they pull it on you.
Criminologist Elliott says for many teens, guns have replaced cars as the new status symbol.
Somehow it has become fashionable for kids to get guns, to have guns. If we talk to the kids about that, they say, you have to have a gun for protection. They say, the only way I can get respect is if I have a gun. So the whole culture of violence has changed somewhat, and guns are a much more prominent feature of violence today.
All agree the crackdown on firearms will only provide part of the solution. Another challenge is to provide alternatives for teens such as Roberts, who believe the gang offered something important to his life.
Gang is like a family, you know, all brothers. If they blood brothers, most likely they stick together. That's the same thing in gangs.
Kelly says it boils down to self-esteem.
He was somebody, you know. He felt that he was able to find his place, you know, in life, you know. And again, it's unfortunate that many of these kids feel like they have to yoke up to this type of element to fill those type of voids in their life.
But Kelly says Roberts outgrew the thrill of gang life and began to feel trapped in it.
He was disappointed at the way that he felt that his family felt about him. He felt, you know, that he had let his mom down. He felt that, again, the gang had become such a dominant part of his life that he had really lost control of his own identity, of that little person inside of him. And he had to portray a certain image in order to be accepted, in order to survive. And I do feel that the time that he did cry, on the last time, that he felt that his end was near.
Was it?
It was.
Could he have been saved?
It would have been a difficult task. He was so angry, it would have taken the right person for him, somebody who would really need patience to work hard with Damon. But I think, given the right circumstances, given the right program, that he could have been saved. Because I've seen kids as angry get into the right programs and they have been turned around.
Dawkins doesn't think the new legislation will do anything to reach other youths like Damon Roberts.
Obviously, they don't listen to the laws that are being passed or anything. People are involved in crimes. And not that we shouldn't have tougher penalties for young people who are becoming hardcore gang members, but we should also have a balance here and provide them with opportunities to get out of gangs and prevent young people from getting into gangs.
Solutions, Governor Roy Romer says, must come from the core of a community.
Can one state try to address those root causes?
I think one state can do it, except it'd be helpful to have everybody try to support it. But I think that one state can make a great deal of difference. So we're going to pass some laws that are going to help us. We're going to get guns off the street in the hands of kids. But beyond that, we need to go to neighborhoods, to blocks, to houses, and to parents and say, we've got to have a cultural change. We need to shun violence and shun those who use guns. It's like we did with drunk driving. It used to be funny to see somebody drive drunk. Now we abhor it. We shun it. We reject you from the community if you drive drunk. I want to have that same cultural change occur on the use of guns.
Last week, Colorado's new juvenile gun law hit a legal snag when one county judge found part of it unconstitutional. Still, dozens of juveniles throughout the state have been arrested and detained. Gang-related crime continues to rise. And the parents of Damon Roberts say they're doing their best to keep his younger brother away from gangs.